is accessible for all of your students. So the first thing we're going to touch on is the why. Why does accessibility matter? And looking at this slide, you hopefully see that there are some problems. It's really hard to read. The colors are really tough. That link can't even see what it says at all. And I even have pretty good eyes with my glasses. So we're going to try this again. And here we go. So accessibility matters because it's inclusive and gives equal access to all. If you think about a building with an elevator, it's required for people who have disabilities, but a lot of us, if not all of us, have used the elevator at some point. So for someone with a physical disability, the lack of an elevator leaves only the first floor accessible, but having an elevator doesn't hurt anybody. It helps a lot more people. Like if you have to travel to the eighth floor, probably using the elevator. If you have a small child with you, you're probably taking the elevator. The same, it goes with your course content. Ensuring that your online content is accessible is necessary for some, but it's helpful for everybody. Things like captions are critical for someone with an audio impairment, but I mean, I used closed captions during my grad program because I had little kids running through the room. So, yes, they're required for some of your students, but they're also extremely helpful for the rest of them too. So, it increases usability and improves the student experience. And then, yes, when it comes down to it, we legally have to make our content accessible for students that need it. The three categories we're really going to get into today is your videos, your images, and your text. Starting with videos, making sure your videos have closed captions, allow for anyone with audio impairment, or just there's a lot of distractions around it, makes that video accessible. They can read along and see what is happening in the video, what they're talking about, whether they can see it or not, or hear it or not. So if you are creating your own videos, if you upload them to Canvas Studio, captions will be automatically generated for you, which is awesome. You should go check them because I know 90% of the time it spells Widener wrong. Or if you are using an acronym, sometimes it ends up looking a little wonky, depending on what those letters are. It might try to spell them out. There's certain things that are good to check and make sure they're right, but it will generate those captions for you, saving a lot of time. At this point in time, because YouTube generates them automatically, most videos on YouTube have closed captions. If you are using Zoom to record your videos and sharing it with just the link to the recording, there are captions there as well. So most of what you're using video for already has the captions, but it's still important to make sure you check them, confirm that they do exist, and just if it's in Canvas Studio, just kind of double check them to make sure they're accurate. So if you're in Canvas Studio, in your library, there's an icon in the top right corner to confirm, yes, there are captions on it. So like I said, currently Canvas Studio does automatically generate your captions. However, if you have videos that were uploaded prior to March of 2024, that was prior to them automatically generating the captions. So you will have to go back and manually generate the captions. So you can see this video on the right does not have that icon. So I would need to open it and generate the captions. If you're in YouTube, if the CC closed caption icon is there and able to be clicked, that video has closed captions. If it does not, if it's grayed out, if you hover, it will say the captions are not available and that video does not have closed captions. So you would need to find a way to include closed captions, which either TLT or librarians can assist with ways to do that. if you are, oh, and then Molly's going to touch on
Okay.
some of the library resources and the closed captions related there.
Right. Thanks, Rachel.
Mhm.
So much like with YouTube, for any of the library's streaming video content, whether that comes from Canopy, Avon, psychotherapy.net, or the ICE Video Library, captions are available. Just like you looked for the little closed caption logo in YouTube, you can look for the closed caption logo here in Canopy and psychotherapy.net. And that will turn so that the captions are not on by default, but they're available for all of the videos. So you do have to turn them on. If you're showing it in your class or you're using it for something else, you will have to turn them on, but they all should be available. If we could go to the next slide. Think. Psychotherapy.net sort of goes one step further. Closed captions are available on the videos, but they also have transcripts available for you. To the right of the video is the full transcript of the whole video, but underneath the video is a dynamically generated transcript that appears as the words are spoken. So with psychotherapy.net, if you're using any of those videos in your classes or with your students, there are closed captions available and then two transcripts available, which can be very useful. Okay, Rachel, back to you.
All right. And then just to let you know, just a good segue, Canvas Studio didn't even have time to add a screenshot because it literally released yesterday. Canvas Studio did add a rolling dynamic transcript as well, which can help students. And sometimes that can be helpful because sometimes we have slides that have things along the bottom. And then when you add closed captions, it can block some of the content. So having that rolling dynamic transcript can help give students that text without interfering with what's on the slide. So we're going to now talk a little bit about alt text. So on your images, alt text is a description of the image content for screen readers and low bandwidth. A lot of people associate it with screen readers, but if someone's using internet that does not have high speeds, it will prioritize loading text before images. So sometimes that alt text will show up and the image won't necessarily load. So that can be helpful if someone has a visual impairment, but also if they're just using really bad internet. Anything that's an icon or a banner that has no effect on the content can be marked decorative. So if you have a little icon of a clipboard for a to-do list, like you don't need to describe that image. But if your image is crucial to the content or adds to the content, you would want to describe what is happening or what is shown in the image to help somebody actually know what that image is. So when you are in Canvas, if you upload an image, clicking on that image will show you the image options button. When you click that, you can see on the right, you have the ability to add alt text. You also have a checkbox to mark that image as decorative. So, this exclamation point next to the header would be marked decorative. We don't need to know that it's an exclamation point. However, the image that shows that I need to click the account button should have alt text. Sometimes alt text can be tricky because you want to describe it, but it really shouldn't be more than 120 characters. You shouldn't have an entire paragraph. However, sometimes that's hard to balance depending on what your image actually is. If you are having trouble with creating alt text, some people will actually upload the image into an AI platform and say, can you generate appropriate alt text for this image? And it actually, for the most part, does a really good job. I mean, you, of course, should read it and check it, but for the most part, it actually does do a really good job for you. Now, one of the big things that comes up when we talk about images and alt text are infographics. So depending on the file type of an infographic, Sometimes it's accessible, sometimes it's not. If you have the ability to share your infographic as a PDF file, it will then, most of the time, we still need to check. We're going to talk about PDF, so don't worry. It will be readable. However, if you share a PDF as a JPEG or a PNG file, it will not be accessible. What will happen is if you have an image file of a PDF and someone relies on a screen reader, it will say image and then read the file name, or if there's alt text, it will read the alt text, but that's it. So a screen reader can't read text within an image. So the student would know that there's an image there. Depending on what's entered as alt text, they would get that, but they wouldn't necessarily get all of the text that's on that infographic. But you also can't put the entire, all of the text from the infographic into the alt text. So infographics can be tricky sometimes. So if you have the ability to download it as a PDF, awesome. That makes it significantly more accessible. Now, there are some things we can do if you only have it as an image file. Sometimes what we'll do is help people create a Word document version of the information. So you can underneath say, if you need a screen reader version, click here or something like that. Some people will kind of screen share the infographic and just provide an audio summary. So we can find some workarounds if you only have it as an image, but if you have the ability to download it as a PDF, it is significantly better for students that do rely on a screen reader. So when we talk about text, we're going to talk about a few different things related to text. The first being your PDF files. So most PDFs are already web accessible, especially if you're downloading articles from the library's website or any scholarly article publication like their website. That PDF is already going to be accessible. However, if you go to the library and scan a textbook, you might get that as a PDF file, but that file won't be accessible by default. The way to verify that your PDF files are accessible is to try and use your mouse and select the text. If the text can be selected, you are likely good to go and it's accessible. If you can't select the text, it can't read the text. So if you are checking a PDF file and you can't select the text, you are welcome to reach out to either TLT or the library, and we can assist you with what's called an OCR, which is part of our either Adobe or Foxit software, and it can basically scan for the text so that it's then readable and accessible. But that's one of those things people will sometimes think, oh, it's a PDF, it's fine. And while most are, we do want to really be careful with scanned PDFs. And then Molly's going to talk about doing this with
Yes.
EBSCO.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so scanning print documents to make them digital for your classes is something that is definitely good to do. It makes the content more accessible to students if the PDF is readable. And as Rachel said, TLT can help with that. The library can help with that as well. But if you are finding content in the library's databases, including our streaming video content, it would be better that you link to it instead of taking it out of the database to put it in your class in Canvas. So what we like to say is, if you like it, link it. So from databases that come from EBSCO, ProQuest, psychotherapy.net, Canopy, and Avon, which are the streaming video, you can literally just cut and paste the URL from your web browser. And then you can copy that into your document in Canvas, or you can link out to it. That'll get your students directly to this content where we know that it will be accessible for them. If you could go to the next slide. For other databases that are not EBSCO based or ProQuest based, you will have to use what's called the Open Athens Link Generator, which we provide access to. I apologize. That's my dog ringing bells to go outside. So because you cannot copy and paste the URL directly from things like Science Direct or Wiley or Medline, you will have to convert or Athenize your URL in order to provide it to your students. But all of the library staff, all the librarians can help you with that. We have a great guide that Rachel has already put in the chat, and we'll put at the chat at the end of the class so that you have it, that provides the link to these things and gives you detailed instructions on how to do this. And again, we're available to help. But if you are using PDFs from our resources, from the library's databases, or ebook content, or streaming video, it is better to leave them in the database and link to it than to download it and re-upload it to Canvas.
So we're also going to talk about the way you organize your text. So text organization has a pretty big impact on accessibilities and how students process information. So even for students that don't rely on a screen reader, seeing sections with headers and breaking it up can really help with just being able to take natural pauses or read a chunk at a time. However, if you're using a screen reader, that organization structure allows them to kind of use keyboard shortcuts to skip around. So once they've read it the first time, if they're looking for specific information, having headers there allows them to navigate the page much quicker. And I will say, like, I've tried using a screen reader and like the shortcuts are overwhelming, but if someone's relying on it, watching them navigate a page with the screen reader is crazy. They're like, boom, boom, boom. Oh, I'm right where I need to be. But if the page is not organized that way, it does take them a lot longer to get to specific parts of a page. Now, when we talk about headers and using sections, it's really important that we don't just take text and change the size. A screen reader doesn't actually know that it's a header. If we do that, it won't tell the student that it's bigger. It just looks like ordinary text, or it just reads it like regular text. So in the text editor, there's actually a drop down to select the type of header it is. If you actually tag that text as a header, that's what makes those keyboard shortcuts work. That's what communicates to someone with a screen reader, hey, this is a header, this is a new section. So creating those headers properly makes a big difference to someone who is relying on that screen reader. So color is also a big one. So on that very first slide I shared that was extremely hard to read, the contrast between the background and the text really affected our ability to see. So color contrast is a very important part of accessibility. There needs to be a specific difference between the background and the foreground. And honestly, even some colors that look like they might be okay when we are just looking at them are still not quite different enough for someone who has like color blindness or a visual impairment.
Mm-hmm.
So Canvas has a built-in accessibility checker that we will also talk about, but color contrast is one of those things that it will check. The other thing to keep in mind is color alone will not be caught by a screen reader. So just like changing the font size won't tag it as a header for a screen reader, if you make something that is really, really important red, but don't do anything else to it, a screen reader is not going to stop and say, hey, this is red. So using another point of emphasis like bold, underline, or italics will help someone relying on a screen reader. Hey, this is emphasized in some way. So you can use color. You just shouldn't use only color to identify something as being important. Another part of text that we need to look at is our links. So we want to make sure that we are using descriptive text for our links instead of the full URL. Now, I know if you're doing a full APA or MLA citation, that URL is part of the citation. But if we are linking things, we really do want to avoid putting that whole URL, and we want to use something that's more descriptive, because when a screen reader reads it, like it will identify it as a link and it'll read the text. If you have the full URL, it will read the full URL. So it will read https://www dot, and then sometimes it will read the words in the URL, and sometimes because they're not separate words, it will just start reading every single letter. So I don't know if you've ever listened to a screen reader read an entire URL, but it is not fun. So keep that in mind when you're sharing information and links with your students to actually use a title. And if you're in Canvas, if you type out that title and select the text, you can insert a link and it will link the title. So instead of just copying and pasting the URL, attach the link to the text. Now, if you are, just like we talked about color contrast, changing something to a link will change the color. So even like on this slide, my background, my text is white. My text fits my color contrast standards. But if I link something, it's going to turn to that royal blue, which on this background won't be accessible. So keep in mind that you don't have to keep that default blue as your link color. You can change the font color of a link. So I wouldn't necessarily in this case want to make it white. I do want it to stand out, but I could make it a slightly different color that is still enough of a contrast with that blue background.
Mhm.
So we're going to talk about a couple different ways to check for accessibility. I'm going to talk about them, but then I'm also going to pause and pull up Canvas to show you in a real course what it can look like. So in Canvas, you actually have, there's a new feature if you haven't seen it, and it is a course accessibility checker. So it is the accessibility link that is now in your course navigation menu. So I am going to pull that up and show you what it looks like. But in each individual text editor box, that rich content editor, you have an accessibility checker right below the text editor box. And it will flag things like color contrast. If you have headers that aren't set up properly, if you are listing things and they're not with true bullets, like if you just put a dash and a space, it will flag that as like, hey, it looks like you're making a list. Let's make it a real list. If you're using a table and there's not headers, or it looks like there's a lot of like accessibility issues in your table, it will flag that. It also, or if there's missing alt text, and it will give you the ability to fix it as they flag it. So if you pull up that sidebar, it'll say, hey, it looks like this color contrast isn't right. Do you want to pick a new color? And you can do it right in there. Now, you can also use the accessibility checkers that are built into all of your Microsoft products. So if you are using Word, if you're using PowerPoint, those products do also have accessibility checkers. So if you're making slides for your class, you can make sure that they are web accessible so that when you share them, students have no problem utilizing them, whether they're using a screen reader, whether they're using different types of accessibility tools. So I'm going to pause real quick and pull up Canvas. Let me see. Okay. So this is a course that TLT developed to help demonstrate some of the accessibility pieces. So as you can see, there's a lot happening that does not look great. Like we actually call this our hot mess course. Um, so if I click edit on any of my text boxes, you can see right here, I have that accessibility icon. And when I click it, it will pull up an accessibility checker sidebar. So it will highlight the issue. And oh my goodness, I didn't even realize there was text there. It was so light. So it will tell me that this text needs to meet a certain contrast ratio. So I can quickly drag it here and click apply, and it will go on to the next issue. And then I can move that around to choose a different color that meets the contrast. Now, if I move it to something that still does not meet the contrast ratio, it will not even let me click apply. So that's how it's like if you're not sure, like, oh, am I moving it enough? Am I changing it enough? You can see as I get far enough away from white, it will allow me to click apply. And then I get balloons. I have fixed everything. Now, I'm not going to save this because I want those accessibility issues to stay there so that we can do other demonstrations. So I'm going to click cancel. So now the other way I can check accessibility in my course is to come down here and click on the accessibility link in my course navigation. So this one has not been scanned yet because this is a pretty new feature. It's only been out for a couple weeks. So I'm going to click scan course. Now, this isn't a huge course, so hopefully it doesn't take very long. There we go. So it will show me all of my resources and how many accessibility issues there are. And so this page has 9 accessibility issues. Now, if I click fix, it will tell me the issues, but honestly, most of the time that's not helpful on its own. So I'm going to just open the page. And this is a really, if you've been around for a while, this is a really old page. We don't use this page anymore. But if I click edit, I can see the individual accessibility checker on the page. So sometimes that is easier depending on what type of issue it is. But for a resource that only has one, whoops, I didn't mean to click the page. I go back. So if I go to this one has one issue. Oh, it's just telling me that it's the wrong header type. So I don't need to go to that page. I'm just going to click reformat and then it will fix it right there. I don't even have to go to the page. So depending on how many issues there are, sometimes just opening up this sidebar and fixing it is fine. If there's a lot of issues, sometimes it will be easier to just go to the page and see what's in that text editor box and go off of that. Now, this course accessibility checker will only check the things that the individual text editor box accessibility checker will check. So this is not scanning videos for captions. It's not checking your actual files to see if those are readable. So you will still need to check those things. However, it's really nice that we can just scan the whole course and instead of going to each individual page and saying, okay, are there accessibility issues? Nope, cool. Are there accessibility issues? Yes, let me fix them. And then going to another page and then going to an assignment and then going through everything in your course. It is nice that we can see it all on one page to know, okay, I have a few pages I need to look at or a few assignments I need to look at that do have some accessibility issues.
Canvas is really doing a heavy lift here. This is great.
Yes, it is very exciting that this is there. It also categorizes them. So I can see I have 7 alt text issues. I have I have 3 contrast issues with text. I have some table issues and I have some header issues. So it can be really helpful, especially if you have been copying a course over a number of times and you haven't gone through and like looked at alt text or looked at some of these things. It can be really helpful. Now knowing a lot of the, like, as you learn more about digital accessibility and you're building new content, it does make it much easier to just kind of add those things as you go and as you're creating. But yeah, it can be really time consuming to go through every piece of an older course. So this does make that much easier. We're really excited that they implemented this.
It certainly looks like a time saver to me.
Yes. Right. So, the so Molly, do you have anything that I may have missed?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, as far as the library is concerned, we're definitely here to support faculty in their accessibility tasks or their accessibility quest, let's say, as TLT is. But really, what I want everybody to know from the library's point of view is that we're here to help, for one. We are definitely here to help with like the accessibility of the PDFs. We can check that for you or help you to make it accessible. All of our video content that we offer streaming should already have the closed captions available, and psychotherapy.net offers the transcript. And then, really, instead of trying to wrangle content out of the library's resources, keeping them in the original resource and linking to it is like the most powerful tool in your arsenal because the databases are assuring that their content is accessible. Now, every once in a while, you do find something that isn't accessible, reach out to your liaison librarian. We can help you with that. But really, keeping it in the database and linking to it is the most advantageous thing to do.
So I did want to share one more thing in Canvas before we, oh, I think I closed that. So if you ever do want to test out what the screen reader's like, you all do have access to it. So I'm going to share this again. So we're going to come back to our messy course. All right. So all the way on the left, this speaker icon will activate the read speaker. And if I click play, it will read this page of Canvas. So you will get to experience what it is like for someone who's utilizing a screen reader. We also, if you open a file, you have the icon up at the top next to the download option.
Hmm.
And that will open a full doc reader. Now, this one is probably not the best example because it's only 2 words, but what's really nice is there's a lot more features than just, we're going to read this document. I can actually use a page mask and I can follow along and focus on just one line at a time, which can really help for readers that get easily distracted or starts, looking at the next paragraph and they haven't finished this paragraph. I can also use a reading ruler, which does something very similar, but it's not blocking out the rest of the page. It's just underlining the line that you're on. I can also utilize a highlighter to highlight text if I want to, and it will also read the document. So the actual doc reader that opens up in another page has a lot more features for students that might not even just need it read, but read like would have an improved experience if they have these reading tools. So just making sure that you know it's available so you can tell students it's available is really helpful. But then we'll jump back to our key takeaways. So just making sure that you're utilizing the accessibility checkers, whether it is on a specific page or assignment or the course accessibility checker, double checking that your videos have captions, double checking if you have PDFs that you're including that you can just quickly check and select that text to make sure it is readable, and adding alt text to your images. So those are like the four biggest things, but we have a lot of resources on campus. Their TLT has a SharePoint site for accessible design. On the Tech Hub, the ITS Tech Hub, there's a whole page dedicated to accessibility features that actually are really more geared towards helping you and helping students individually, like outside of Canvas. There's a lot of Microsoft tools, things like that. If you ever have questions about making sure things are accessible or what a specific student needs, you can always reach out to Rebecca Ross or Chris Haas. You have your library liaisons, and the library has created an awesome LibGuide on creating accessible digital materials. So if I hasn't already, there
I just put them in the chat.
awesome. So there are links to some of these resources because it doesn't do us any good to link it on these slides. So there are a lot of resources you can utilize to make sure your content is accessible. And if any of you have questions now, we are happy to answer them or talk about them.
We do have one question that was asked in the chat, which is, how did Rachel get to the reader she's demonstrating? So the
Oh,
screen reader in Canvas.
okay. So I can go back to that. All right. So let's see. So Brian, when I opened the file, so just on the Canvas page, and I'm on this preview screen, it's actually right here up in the top right between download and info. And then when I click that, that opens it in another tab. And that's how you get to the doc reader. You're welcome.
Hmm. We have another question, says, I missed the reasoning for linking articles instead of uploading them in the course. So the reason is twofold. One is for accessibility. So the more you manipulate a file, the downloading and re-uploading, sometimes that can change the nature of the file and make it less accessible. It's accessible to start with. Then in the downloading and re-uploading or manipulation, you do lose the accessibility, and then you have to go back in and check it and make sure it's accessible again. So leaving it in its original environment, I guess, in its natural habitat, so to speak, keeps those accessibility features. And I will also say it is a little self-serving for the library, or really, we maintain resources based on usage. And so if you link to something in the library's database, the usage, every time a student accesses it, that counts as usage of that item. If you download it and upload it into your course, that only counts as one usage. So for us, when we're trying to justify spending a lot of money on these subscription resources, the higher the usage count, the more we go, oh, we know that it's being used. When you take it out of its natural environment, again, we lose that usage data. And so it's harder to figure out what's being used and what's not. But so it does help us and help you maintain access to the resources. But really, it's about not messing up the original accessibility of the document. Any other questions? You don't have to put them in a chat. You can actually just ask them outside of the chat too. I
Right. Well, and
guess
if you think of any later, you are always more than welcome to reach back out.
absolutely.
I love
Um,
all the functionality of that Canvas like PDF reader. That's amazing. I just opened my syllabus in it and it's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, it they've we've had that for a while, but it didn't have as much functionality. It has like we just actually went back to our vendor to get another demo and there's a lot more now. It's really great now.
I'm very impressed with that. I think that's, I mean, it's to say like you need to check all of the content you've ever created that's out there for accessibility is legitimately a very daunting task. Did I catch every image I've ever put in there? Is every file that's a lot of work. I think that accessibility checker, when this is the first time I've seen it demoed, really does a lot of heavy
Yeah.
lifting.
Well, that accessibility checker is only a couple weeks old. The doc reader we've had, it just didn't have as
Yes.
much functionality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's last year when we did this Thriving in a Digital World series, Amanda Schultes from the Commonwealth Law School, Delaware Law School, I apologize, talked about the digital reading strategies and how you actually have to read digital content in different ways than you read print content because your brain processes it differently. And a lot of the things she talked about, a lot of the strategies that she provided, that doc reader has built in. So even if you don't need a screen reader, quote unquote, to read it to you, it has those features that makes reading digital content easier. And I think that's great
Mhm.
for everyone.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Going once, going twice? No? Well, as Rachel said, if you do have questions that come up, TLT and the library are here to support you and answer those for you. So please do reach out. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.